everyone. Welcome back to another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. Today, I am joined by Lacole Smith, author of Leaps with an S of Faith, my story of overcoming fear. Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure being here.
So, I have to tell you a little secret that when I saw your book title, I really smiled because the last chapter in my book is faith over fear. And so just to see a whole book about faith really made me smile because, and this is just my opinion, I grew up in the church and a lot of people talk about having faith, faith the size of a mustard seed, right? We got it down pat. We can say it, we can recite it. But when it comes time to execute faith, when it comes time to do the work, right? We don't
Right.
do that part. We just think by osmosis it's all going to happen.
Pretty much.
So, why don't you tell our listening, viewing audience a little bit about your background before we get into the book?
Well, I am Lacole Smith. I am the CEO and founder of AL Publishing and Consulting. Um, but basically, the Lord just kind of pulled me into this, I guess you can say. Um, I don't have a background in really like anything dealing with writing. I don't have a background in anything, like that. So I know it wasn't nothing but God that put me in this position to do this. I grew up in the church as well. My dad is a pastor. My mom was the, first lady. So I've been in the church all my life. That's all I know is church. Um, my mom been sick since the age of 6. Um, and she passed in 2016. But all my life, I saw her faith. I saw her believe that she was gonna come out of anything that she went through. That she was gonna, she really was the Job of the women of this season because she went through so much and she just knew that God was going to fulfill all the things that he was going to fulfill for her. So I grew up knowing that faith was real. And even though I grew up like that, my shake my faith was shaken a couple of times. And he put it in position where I had to step out on faith many times. So um even when you're challenged, the Lord is going to make sure that He brings you back to that stepping stone, knowing that you can overcome things. So, like I say, I grew up in the church, so basically that's where my background of faith came from. But as far as regular jobs and regular things, I've been in management for over 27 years. I recently started working at a hospital because I was actually tired of retail. So it has been a pleasure. I've been in there for 4 years. Um, I'm hands on with the patients. I'm hands on with their family, and I really enjoy that. I know that that's something that I needed in my life, and I wish I would have been doing it longer because I like to talk to people that faith has been shaken, or they're nervous, they're scared, they don't know what's gonna happen, and I like lifting them up and giving them a reason to keep pushing and keep going.
Oh, I love that. So, I actually have been in healthcare for 33 years. I was a manager at McDonald's in high school, had a baby. Not in high school, but 11 months after I got out of high school. And I realized very early on that it takes a really special person to work, hand in hand with the patient. I thought I was going to be a nurse. So for 5 years, I worked as a medical assistant. I have a family of nurses. And I ultimately was like, this clinical stuff is not for me. I felt that I would be better in leadership capacity, but then I realized, ooh, I do not want to lead people. Um, because it's really more than leading, right? That's a whole episode by itself. But I realized that being behind the scenes, leading, motivating, and pushing people is really where I needed to be. So hats off to you for being in that room. I worked at University of Chicago here in Chicago, and I worked 12-hour shifts. I worked on the transplant floor, and it was something about going there one day and the patient was there and then the next day they had died. It does something to your soul, but
Yeah,
it is also very rewarding to go into the room and put a smile on someone's face who may be just had the surgery or just had the transplant. And I'll never forget that I worked there in '97. I had a patient who had a kidney transplant. And then exactly 2 years later, I interviewed at a hospital, different hospital, for a leadership role and got the job. And one day, um, this person and I was sitting there having a conversation. And I said, you know what? I think you were my patient at University of Chicago, and we got to talking, and realized that it was him.
oh, wow.
And he was a really nice person. He died a couple of years ago, but I'm so happy that I had an opportunity to spend time with him after he got his transplant, and he lived 10 or 15 years later. So you never know who you meet and how you can influence them.
That's exactly correct. So, and sometimes you don't know, because you had the opportunity to go back and see them, but sometimes we don't get that opportunity and we find out things behind the scenes or after the fact. So it's very pleasing to know that, to actually talk to somebody and see that they're thriving after you've been with them through that process. It's amazing.
Yes, it is. And you know what? I the I'm sorry, my chair is like today is like giving me some havoc. It's raising havoc underneath my bottom. um Sometimes we don't know the why we're
Mhm.
in that place until it's revealed to us. And for me, that just lets you know how amazing God is. That he would put you in places that you don't even realize that you are at. Why you there? You just there, but then you realize it was for a reason.
Exactly, exactly. And that happens more than we even know, because sometimes we don't even catch it, so
That
it's
is
amazing.
true. We don't even catch it because you know why? I was talking to another guest, and I think one of the reasons we don't catch it is because we just so busy doing that we don't
Yeah.
take intentional pauses in life just to, as my other guest said, um, you go outside and you're just in a hurry to get in your car. But what about going outside and looking up at the sky and looking at the trees and looking at nature and just really appreciating what we have?
That's true. That's true.
So let's talk about leaps of faith, my story of overcoming fear. Um, Again, listening, viewing audience, you know my deal. We need you to buy your own copy. So we're not gonna tell you everything that's going on in this book, but tell us a little bit about why you decided to write the book.
In 2000 and probably 2017, it came to me to write a book about faith. Um, and I kept trying to create something about faith, and it just wasn't working. No matter what direction I was going in, it just I couldn't get it out there. I couldn't get it finished. And one day it came to me to write about myself. Because I remember at the age of 12, my mom said her and my dad would help people then, and I would help people later. And I was like, well, the only way I know how to help someone is to tell them the things that I've been through. And at that point, I had been through a couple of things. In 2011, I had been through an accident. Um, Growing up younger, I came up. I was in a class. I was the only colored person in that class. I've been through being a single parent, and I was like, okay, so my life really can relate to a lot of people. I can really let them know that it is sunshine at the end of the tunnel, and I've been through a couple of them. So as I started to shift to start writing about myself, and I was like, you know what? Nobody's gonna want to know about me. So I put it down. I stopped. Um, but I couldn't shake that feeling that I needed to write something about faith. I just couldn't shake it. So I went to my dad because at this point my mom was deceased, and I was talking to my dad about it, and he was like, basically, if God give it to you, He's gonna get you through it, and it's for a reason. And he pretty much left it at that. And I was like, well, Dad, I need a little bit more. Can you know? And he was like, mm, like I've given you what you need. And I was like, okay, so I'm gonna pick the book back up. I'm gonna start back to writing. I talked to my husband, and he was very encouraging and really, really stood behind me with it. And even when I would stop writing, he would be like, "Don't you supposed to be doing something?" Kind of edging me on. My children, they were excited that their mom was writing a book. So I was like, okay, I always told them, basically keep pushing, keep going. So I can't pull back now. And as much as I wanted to, I just couldn't. But I hit a blank wall when I got to the chapter about my mom. And it took me 6 months to write that chapter, and it might be one of the shortest ones in the book. Um, because it was just so emotional. Because she wasn't just my mom, she was my biggest supporter, she was my best friend. um she really understood me, and she was great when it came to giving advice. My dad gave great advice, but you know you always think of him as, okay, this is advice from my pastor, this is advice from the minister of the church. So it was hard, it was difficult, but I was like, okay, my daddy said just keep pushing, just keep pushing, keep going. So I continued to write. The pandemic hit, and everything shut down, so it really gave me an opportunity to think about things and write things, um, and enjoy the fact that I can do this, and I've been through so much. And the pandemic was a perfect example of overcoming um, my fears, because I really was terrified at first to go outside, because I was like, I don't want to get COVID. I don't want it. I don't want it. I don't want it. But I started going out to the stores, and I would mask up, do all the things. I would come back in, and it was different. Life was different, but we made it through it. So I was like, okay, I gotta put this book out, you know. And I ended up with, her name was Toya, and she was doing publishing through her company. And it was a lot, because it was like you got to go to the editor, you got to go to the printer, you got to go through this, you got to go through that. And, you know, uh, the editing process was so back and forth, it was a lot. But I didn't give up. I kept pushing, and I overcame that fear of putting my information out there where people would see it and know. And I was like, well, they can't judge me because I judged myself when I wrote the book. So that's kind of where that came from.
I love it. So there's a couple of things that I want to mention because everyone's journey with writing their book is different. And one of the things I tell people is that I've only written one book, but I've written a lot of other things. And it's 2025. Technology has literally made it possible for us to write without actually typing. And what I mean by that is my first couple of chapters of my book, I literally opened up Zoom and just started talking and crying to Zoom. And 30, 40 minutes later, I had a chapter. And at that time, my publisher actually transcribed those videos, and it was only like 3 chapters. But then after that, I was like, wait a minute. You can open up Microsoft Word. There's a microphone button. You can just click it
Mhm.
and start talking, and you can just speak from your heart and not be so concerned about grammar and all of that. At that point, it's just getting the concepts and the words out of your mind, out of your heart. And I'll never, ever, ever forget when I wrote my last chapter, Faith Over Fear. I was at a retreat for speakers, and we were getting ready for the closing event. And I literally went to the balcony of our hotel room, opened up Microsoft Word, and just started talking. Now, I had a roommate, and she was like, "Did you audio record that?" I was like, "No." She was like, "It was so powerful, so touching." Um, and I left out of off of that balcony and went to the event with this glow all over my face. And what I realized, and you actually talk about this in the book, every time, every tear you cried had purpose. And I was talking and crying through most of my book writing experience. And it was so freeing because it was all up here and I was able to get it out. So I think that a lot of times we put this pressure on ourselves for it to be perfect instead of focusing on progress. And I have to really, I do a lot of reading. So outside of 52 authors, I'm just a reader, and so I do a lot of self analysis, like, oh, in my first book, I should have done XYZ. And as I'm writing my second book, um, I've been very intentional about how I'm approaching the book, but I'm also constantly reminding myself
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be perfect. You need to focus less on the mess and more on the message so that when the time comes, you can release it. So, and I really truly believe what we go through is not for us. It's so that we can help somebody else. And we don't know that going through it, right? Like,
Yeah, we don't.
in the in the book, you talked about, and I'm glad you mentioned growing up, going to school. You were the only Black kid in the school. Um, Talk a little bit about that.
Um, well, I wasn't the only black in the school. I was the only black in my class,
Okay,
but
okay.
it wasn't that many of us at the school. Um, and this was back in '79. Um, I'm 5 years old. I'm in a class with people that I don't know. Little kids, I have no idea who they are. I've never been around them. I've never seen them. I've never been around this many, Caucasian people before in my life. And my teacher was also black. So I was excited about that. That was a good thing because I had her to relate to. But it still was kind of lonely. But it wasn't so bad because I was the only child at that time. So I was like, okay, I'll go over here and I'll play by myself and I'll do my thing. And then I would go home and I would tell my mama, none of the kids played with me. None of the kids wanted to be around me. So even though at school it seemed like it didn't affect me, it really did, because I wanted to play with the other kids like everybody else. And one day, and we're actually still friends to this day, one of the girls came over and she was like, hey, you want to come and play with us? But I guess they were scared to approach me because I was always to myself and I was scared to go over to them. And it was so welcoming to know that basically each side probably was thinking the same thing, and yet we never had the courage to take that step. And once she took that step, everybody kind of just kind, they had some that didn't really come around, but for the most part, her and three of her friends, we played together, we grew up together, we went to school together, we graduated together. And I still talk to two of them. One of them is in Germany, so I don't get to talk to her as much, but we still keep in contact. And that was way back in '79. So I'm glad she made that step because I probably never would have.
Wow. When you said, let me tell you something funny. You know how they say young at heart? You said 79, and I was like, wait a minute. I was born in 73. I was here. But, in my mind, I'm like 25, 35. But I definitely cannot identify with that experience because I grew up
Yeah.
in Chicago, and honestly, and I've been thinking about this a lot. It really wasn't until I turned 16 that I think I saw more Caucasians because my elementary school was all black. The neighborhood I grew up in was all black. But once I started working at McDonald's in 1989, I definitely saw all races, right?
Right.
And then in healthcare, in
Mm.
many of the settings that I walked into, I was the only black. And I've been reflecting a lot about that experience because I don't think it's ever bothered me per se.
Mm.
But when I think about it, is when people start to talk about race, right? So, like me going through everyday life, I just was being me because I was very comfortable in being me. But some people make it an issue, and I really hate that because working in healthcare, especially working directly with patients in the beginning, I know that if you're gonna die, we all die the same, no matter what color we are. And so we are the same inside, right? We just look different on the outside. And
Exactly.
I just wish people would just love on each other, period. Right? No matter where you come from.
Exactly. Exactly. Definitely wish that they would. And a lot of times, sometimes it's misunderstanding, I feel. And sometimes it's just each side doesn't want to make the approach. Sometimes it's not that someone is prejudiced, it's not that somebody doesn't, like your race. Sometimes it's just a fear of making that first move. And I've gotten to the point now where I don't meet a stranger. I'm just gonna go up to you. I'm gonna speak. Whether you speak back, I don't, you speak back, that's fine. We hold a conversation, that's fine. We don't hold a conversation, that's not fine. But it's not gonna be on me that I didn't take the approach that I know God would want me to take. And was always told everybody deserves a hello. I grew up in a house that was a stickler. Like my mom was very, very keen on I need you to speak. If you walk into a room, you speak. If you see somebody and they're close to you, you speak. So that is very much drilled into me. And even at work, I be walking through and I be speaking and I know people by name and I guess they be looking like how you know their names, but I take the approach if I don't know your name, I'm gonna walk up to you and I'm gonna ask you what your name is and I'm gonna introduce myself. And I've been doing this since retail and it really helps take a lot of the edge off. It makes people trust you. And it makes life a lot easier because people respect the fact that you're warm, you're open, they can come to you. And I really enjoy it. Like I actually took on the hospital like I did as a retail manager. And that's the role that I take each and every day I walk into work.
Wow. Well, we definitely need more Lacole Smiths in the world because I was, where was I recently? I was on a cruise and in the cabin area, people, always somebody going back and forth to their room. And
Yeah,
so, what I don't understand, how could you be walking down the hall approaching someone and not say hello? How could you get on the elevator, they get on the elevator, how could you not say hello? How difficult is it to say hello? But then I had to reflect on this. Sometimes people are just caught up in their own world
that's so
that
true.
they're walking, right, but they're present, but they're not present. And I think that we all need to be more intentional about just being present because that's how you can pick up on when something not right.
True. That's true. Yeah, that's very true.
so we,
And I've even heard people tell me at work, like, I'll speak and it'll be like a pause, and then they'll be like, "Oh, hello," which makes me know they wasn't really not trying to speak. They just was, focused on whatever it is that they had going on in their mind or whatever they was trying to, do or get to. So
yes, that's a good call out because I think we have a perception of what's going on in their mind, but the reality is you don't know what they thinking, what they going through, what they just experienced. I work a lot with physicians, and I have to educate them. Like I'll have a face to face or a Zoom meeting with them to talk about their documentation. And one of the things that I didn't even realize I was doing, but I do it, is when we sit down, I first just like to ask, how are you doing? Number one. But number two, I also like to say thank you for the work that you do because I don't think that they get enough thanks for it. People think, oh, well, they went to school and they're making all this money, but you don't know what it's like to be responsible for somebody's life, right? That's a heavy burden to carry each and every day. So, and no amount of money can compensate you for that burden.
that's true. That's
So, we are almost out of time, but I would love if you could give our listening, viewing audience some parting words about faith, because the book is Leaps of Faith. But then also tell our listening, viewing audience where they can find you.
um. Well, I'll start with where they can find me, and then I'll leave with the inspiration. Um, you can find me on my website, lacolesmith.com. You can order my books and see all the authors that I've helped there as well. You can find me on Facebook at Lacole Smith. I have a group called Storytelling Unleashed that I post in, and we do little fun things. And I put polls out. Um, well, actually, my assistant does it. I don't do it.
You do it.
But
Listen, it's who not how.
I thank God every day for her because she's amazing. Um,
Listen, my Sophia, I would not be able to operate without her. And that's why when I said who not how, that was actually a book where the author talked about you as the business owner don't need to know and should not be doing all the things. You get you a bunch of who's that can execute
mhm,
how you want things done.
exactly, definitely. That is very important. Um, on Instagram, I am author underscore Lacole Smith. And on YouTube is AL Publishing and Consulting LLC. And we're starting to switch everything over to the AL Publishing and Consulting. So that's going to be the best way to find me on Facebook. If you just want to know about my personal side and the things that I'm doing in the community, look at the Lacole Smith page. That's where you're going to find all the fun stuff. I have a motivational talk group where I interview authors and entrepreneurs, and it's called Motivational Talk Dialogues and Show. You can find me there. We're actually finna go into season 4 next week, so I'll be back on Thursdays and on Tuesdays interviewing. So that's where you can find me on social media. Um, Something inspirational, and the shirt behind me says, "Your voice is important. Speak loudly." So I use that every day. And like I say, I lead with it because I feel like your voice is important. And every time you walk out your house, you're stepping out on faith because you're trusting the fact that God is going to take you where you have to go and bring you back home. So even if you don't have faith or you feel like you don't have faith, you really do. And you use it every single day. So just don't give up the hope. Don't give up on yourself. Don't give up on those around you. Keep pushing, stay focused, and believe that you are here for a reason and a purpose and that your life is important. And as long as you do that each and every day, your faith will steady grow. So go ahead, plant those seeds and flourish and bloom.
Oh, I love that. Well, that is a great way to end. So, listen, everyone, I just finished chatting with Lacole Smith, author of Leaps of Faith, My Story of Overcoming Fear. In the book, you can learn more about Lacole's experiences. We didn't talk about the 18 wheeler situation because we want you to get your own copy to read the book. It's not a very thick book, so you can definitely. This is something that I love to do. I love to go to Starbucks to write my chapters or read them, but also I think more of us need to take some time to go places and read. So whether it's your local bookstore, oftentimes they have seats for you to read. But I think you need to take that time out for you because life is so precious and we spend so much time going that we miss out on just being, who God called us to be.
Exactly.
All right, everyone. Well, this has been another amazing episode of 52 Authors, 52 Weeks. I'll see you next week.